It's basically at its finest. It ain't gonna go away. That'll never go away.
Tonight, new information obtained by APTN shows Mikmaw lobster fishers faced racism from Fisheries and Oceans and the RCMP.
Canada's inaction has left TCN no choice to bring this to the United Nations.
And Tataskweyak Cree Nation is desperate to get clean drinking water. Now they're taking their cause to the UN. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. We begin in Nunavut, where Inuit protesters left the Baffinland iron ore mine in Mary River last night after shutting down the mine for a week by occupying their runway and access road. Our Kent Driscoll joins us from our Iqaluit studio. Kent, what changed and why did they decide to leave?
Thanks. It was the promise of a meeting that convinced the Nunavut land defenders to return home. Not a meeting with the mining company, but a meeting with the Kikitani Inuit Association and Nunavut Tungavik, the regional and territorial Inuit associations. Now, late last night, the protesters put out a press release saying they were leaving the site after receiving an offer to meet with the associations. The Kikitani Inuit Association is key here. They're Baffinland's partner on the project. Under the Nunavut land claim, the regional Inuit organizations control Inuit-owned land and can lease it out to developers for royalties. That lease includes an Inuit impact agreement, things the mining company agrees to supply in return for access to the minerals. That puts millions of dollars in the pockets of QIA, who are supposed to use it to help Inuit. Now, part of what has sparked the protesters is the mine itself and its proposed expansion. But another part is that some Inuit in the communities closest to the mine want to see more direct benefits. They feel that since the mine impacts their communities the most, they should get a bigger percentage of the benefits. And while it might be over for now, the Nunavut land defenders have proven that just 7 determined Inuit can bring a multi-million-dollar mine with 700 employees to a standstill. And how Inuit apply that knowledge going forward may be the most interesting part of the story of all. Back to you in Winnipeg.
Thanks, Kent. Tataskweyak Cree Nation in northern Manitoba has been under a drinking water advisory since 2017. Today, the northern Manitoba community announced they are calling on the United Nations to help pressure the federal government into taking action. Daryl Stranger has more.
Tataskweyak Cree Nation is one of many communities throughout Canada that is under a drinking water advisory. In 2019, the community launched a class action lawsuit, and that action was certified in July of 2020. Now, the community is calling on the United Nations to help with their water crisis. The community has written a letter to the UN Special Rapporteurs.
Canada's inaction has left TCN no choice to bring this to the United Nations. You know, our children, our members are still getting sick from the water. And I feel that, you know, it's Canada's responsibility and duty to provide to all First Nations. And clean drinking water is one of them.
Rapporteurs conduct fact-finding missions to countries to investigate allegations of human rights violations. The community often buys bottled water as they do not trust the water in the area. Those who do drink the water often develop skin problems such as rashes. NDP MP Nikki Ashton hopes this call for international help spurs the federal government into action.
If they won't be moved by their own failure, if they won't be moved by a class action lawsuit, hopefully being shamed on the international stage will force them to act. Let's be clear. This is a pattern of this government. They've been sued for a lack of funding for First Nations children in care over their failure to get clean drinking water. It begs the question, how many lawsuits will it take for the federal government to respect their human rights obligations to First Nations?
Tataskweyak conducted 2 water studies at their own expense in 2018 and 2019 for the water they get from Split Lake. According to the community's lawyer, the results showed the water treatment plant is unable to treat the various bacteria in the water, which includes E. coli contamination and 3 types of blue-green algae which produce toxins harmful to humans.
The water treatment plant is not designed to remove all of those toxins. And as Ms. Ashton mentioned, the current testing regime does not test for all of them. And so part of the effort has been to work with the federal government to put in place a testing regime that will address the concerns that are raised by the studies that Tataskweyak Cree Nation commissioned.
According to Indigenous Services Canada, as of January 26th, there are currently 57 long-term drinking water advisories in 39 communities. APTN reached out to Indigenous Services Canada for comment, but did not hear back as of airtime. Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Tough to see those photos. To Ontario now, where the city of Ottawa has approved development of a new controversial suburb called Taywin. But First Nations chiefs are upset because they weren't consulted, and the city made the deal with a group called the Algonquins of Ontario, who are largely made up of non-status First Nations members. The decision was put to City Council Wednesday and passed by a vote of 16-8. The new suburb will be built in the southeast area of the city and could have up to 45,000 residents. The land for the development was purchased by the Algonquins of Ontario in 2018. Upset over the deal, Algonquin chiefs asked for a meeting with Mayor Jim Watson, but say they've received no reply.
I guess what was really very upsetting as well is when Mayor Watson had indicated this as a reconciliation movement on his behalf and his council in City Hall. So, you know, reconciliation, maybe some of us are not aware of the terms of reconciliation because it seems like it's used for anything and for anyone and, you know, at this time. But, you know, reconciliation, we don't see this as a reconciliation deal, I would say, a deal. You know, the true reconciliation has to happen with First Nations.
Time now to step aside for a quick break. Still to come, reaction to our story on the government document about Mikmaw lobster fishery. Welcome back. Mikmaw lobster fishers who were attacked while exercising a treaty right last summer say internal Department of Fisheries documents obtained by APTN expose systemic racism in the bureaucracy and law enforcement. Here's the reaction to the story Brett Forrester broke yesterday.
It's racism at its finest. It ain't gonna go away. That'll never go away.
This was Mikmaw fisherman Jason Marr's reaction to an APTN report he called unnerving. The report delved into hundreds of obtained documents showing law enforcement knew September protests against the Mikmaw could turn ugly. This officer warned colleagues vigilante actions were planned. The Coast Guard believed it was, quote, likely that protests would turn violent. Yet, as the violence unfolded at sea, followed by attacks on land, fishery officers were told to observe, record, and report because the scene had become too dangerous. Marr later found himself barricaded inside a lobster pound. Police stood by as an angry mob raided it and stole his lobsters. Then they burnt it to the ground.
They allowed it to happen. And I believe they'll continue to allow it to happen. If we were there tomorrow, they'd be there. They wouldn't come and stop it. It'd be the same thing again.
Sabaganagati Chief Mike Sack believes the records reveal systemic racism. He says Canada failed the Mikmaw.
They definitely did fail our people. Maybe the joke is on us for expecting anything different. You know, it's happened over and over again.
Sack was assaulted on the wharf. But before that, he pleaded with Minister Bernadette Jordan for protection. He says the records confirm what was obvious at the time.
And the RCMP are reaching out to DFO, and DFO wouldn't even return their calls. So internally, if you have the left hand don't know what the right hand is doing, when we reached out to the minister and we spoke about things were going on the ground, they're like, no, there's DFOs in the area and they're underwater, and we're standing on the wharf looking out and there's no DFO. So for us, it's the bureaucracy is horrible, right? And
APTN requested interviews with Jordan and multiple federal politicians for this story. They all declined. Instead, Jordan's office sent us a statement. It said extra Mounties were brought in response to the conflict in southwestern Nova Scotia, and 25 charges have since been laid. Brett Forster, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Great work there by Brett. A couple from the Highland Nation in British Columbia are suing Northern Health and 2 hospitals after losing their baby. The story of Sarah Morrison made the news more than a week ago when she was forced to get herself from the hospital in Kitimat to Terrace. In the end, her baby was stillborn. They've hired a lawyer and filed a statement of claim. APTN's Kathleen Martins obtained those documents, and she joins me now from Kitimat. Kathleen, thanks for being with us. Can you quickly take us through the events of what happened here?
For sure. A young couple here from Haisla Nation. They were expecting their first baby together. They went to the Kitimat General Hospital, where a doctor wouldn't see them, suggested they go, advised them really to go to the next bigger community, Terrace, and give birth there. They couldn't get on an ambulance, wouldn't take them. So Sarah's father drove them. It's about 45 minutes. The baby had a strong heartbeat in Kitimat, but during the trip seems to have suffered some kind of an event, and when Sarah gave birth several hours later in Terrace, the child was stillborn.
Kathleen, what are the parents alleging in their statement of claim?
Right. So they've hired a lawyer. They filed a lawsuit that we obtained a copy of the statement of claim exclusively, APTN used, and they are saying that it's a combination of racism and negligence by doctors and even the ambulance service in Kitimat and Terrace that led to the death of their daughter.
Now, Kathleen, are the hospitals or the Northern Health, are they speaking at all?
Well, because when the baby initially died, this was at the end of January, that prompted an internal review, and now that there's a lawsuit, they're not commenting at all. They have been served. That's a standard practice when a patient dies, and so that's both the Northern Health Authority that oversees the hospitals and the Emergency Services organization that oversees the ambulance.
Well, Kathleen, it's a troubling story. Hope the family gets some answers. Appreciate your reporting on this and speaking with us here today.
Thank you, Dennis.
And you can see more on Kathleen's reporting on this by going to our website, aptnnews.ca. Quebec Provincial Police were on high alert today, searching overnight for a federal inmate, a 2-time convicted murderer, who slipped out from the Indigenous Healing Lodge where he was serving time. Lindsay Richardson has more.
51-year-old David Everett Alexson is serving an indeterminate sentence for crimes committed in the Prairie region of Canada. On that list are 2 convictions for second-degree murder. On Wednesday evening, Alexson walked out of the facility in Quebec where he was serving his time. He hasn't returned since. The Wisseskin Healing Lodge in St. Alphonse Rodriguez, approximately 90 minutes north of Montreal, is described as a community residential center, one specializing in Indigenous-specific cultural services and transition programs for inmates nearing the end of their sentence. According to a release from Correctional Services Canada, Alexson was reportedly seen leaving Wisseskin around 6 p.m. on Wednesday.
Welcome to Wisseskin Healing Center.
We called Wisseskin hoping to get more information, but...
So we're not giving any comments right now.
Staff there notified Corrections Canada. A deputy warden at the Archambault Institution explained Alexson went through a rigorous assessment before being transferred to Wisseskin, which is a minimum security facility.
He is considered as a minimal risk for public safety. For sure, the individual was serving an indeterminate sentence since 2005. But since then, he was able to, we were calling that cascading down. So he did several security level within the institution and was able to acquire some competency and some capacity to operate within that type of environment.
Corrections in turn notified Quebec Provincial Police, who issued a warrant for his arrest. Once apprehended, Corrections says Alexson will be assessed at a higher security institution. Alexson is 5'7" and weighs approximately 183 pounds. He has brown eyes and black hair, scars on his right hand and left arm, and tattoos on his arms, chest, and back. This is not the first time he's escaped custody. Anyone with information is urged to contact the Sûreté du Québec. Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Montreal.
Well, we'd like to hear what you think about this or any other story you've seen here. Here's how you can continue the conversation. Send your emails to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on our website, aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Well, time now for one more quick break, but stick around. There's more to come. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And it's a real beauty. This photo of the Northern Lights was taken just a few days ago at Winnipeg Beach, just north of Winnipeg, Manitoba. We're in the midst of a polar vortex, which is, of course, a great time of the year to witness the Aurora Borealis. What an amazing photo. Thanks to Randy and Jamilo. Well, do you have a photo you'd like everyone to see? You can email your photo to share@aptn.ca for a chance to be featured as our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look and see how cold it's going to be out there tomorrow. Starting on the East Coast, -2 with snow for Halifax and Charlottetown. 14 below and snow in Kuujjuaq, 8 below in Nain. Sunny and 13 below for Montreal, 17 below with snow in Chibougamau. -12 with flurries in Sault Ste. Marie. Sunny and 16 below for North Bay. Snow and -17 for Thunder Bay. 21 under sunny skies in Kapuskasing. -25 for God's Lake and Norway House. 28 below under the sun for Winnipeg and Gimli. 1 degree cooler in Brandon. -27 for Regina. 26 below in Saskatoon. -25 for Meadow Lake and La Ronge. Over in northern Alberta, -25 with flurries for Fort McMurray and Peace River. 25 below and partly cloudy for Medicine Hat, -22 with snow in Edmonton. -1 in Vancouver, snow and -1 for Victoria. 18 below under sunny skies for Prince George, -21 in Fort Nelson. 30 below in Old Crow, -22 for Whitehorse. 24 below in Yellowknife, -20 in Norman Wells. -15 in Sax Harbor, 11 below in Pawatuck. -25 for Baker Lake and Cambridge Bay. 17 below in Resolute, -16 in Igloolik. Well, as you may have noticed, I've been wearing my moose hide this week. It's part of a movement aimed at ending violence against Indigenous women and children. This year is the 10th anniversary, and like everything else, its annual event went virtual because of the pandemic.
We wanted to create an opportunity for all Canadians to join us in a ceremony, one that's led by Indigenous peoples, but fasting is something that many cultures can get behind, and so maybe something that they can feel connected to as well. The
Moose Hide campaign is marked by pinning a square of moose hide to a lapel. It was created by Raven Lacerte and her father Paul while on their annual moose hunting trip along the Highway of Tears in 2011. More than 2 million moose hide pins have been distributed to Canadians since, for a day of ceremony, fasting, and action. You can check out the event online at moosehidecampaign.ca. Well, Nation to Nation is coming up in just a matter of minutes. Here's host Todd Lamoran to tell us who he's speaking with.
Tonight we dig a little deeper into a proposed City of Ottawa development. A group representing the Algonquins of Ontario are a part of it. But Algonquins across the border in Quebec say this Ontario organization isn't legitimate because of questions around the ancestry of some of its members. As well, I speak to the CEO of APTN about federal legislation that is supposed to bring telecommunications into the digital age. But will it be good for Indigenous producers of content? And I talked to Canada's new parliamentary poet laureate. She's Cree and lives in Saskatchewan. Louise Bernice Half will let us know what the new job entails. It's coming up in just a few minutes. I'll see you then.
Sounds like Todd's got another great one coming up. RCMP in Prince George, British Columbia have a lot to answer for. It's for the deaths of 3 Indigenous men while in custody. APTN Investigates reporter Lee Wilson has been digging into the story. Here's a preview of his documentary, Death in Custody, Part 2.
Three years ago, Dale Culver died in police custody in Prince George, British Columbia. His daughter, Lily Speed Damox, has been looking for answers ever since.
That nothing is being done. There's been no apologies from any RCMP, not even just the general RCMP public. As just a general, I'm sorry that this happened to your family, that our people have done this to your people.
British Columbia's Independent Investigation Office has recommended 5 charges for RCMP officers involved in the death of Dale Culver. But the family now waits for the Crown to decide if they move ahead or not. Culver's family has been navigating the legal system with very little support.
You know, it's not normal to have to go through it, so you don't really know. You're having a bad day and you're not quite sure why. Or you got a chip on your shoulder one day and you don't really know why. You see a police officer and your instant fear you feel that we shouldn't have to feel. We live in Canada.
And you can watch Death in Custody Part 2 tomorrow night right here after the news. That is all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Thursday. For much more, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for tuning in. Stick around. Todd is up next with Nation to Nation. Have a great day.